Hello, and welcome to Tartan Touchdown episodes, our weekly look back at the biggest stories from the weekend in the NFL. This week, we were down to the Final Four and Championship Sunday, which has delivered two very different games and massive storylines. Tonight, we'll be breaking down who is heading to the Super Bowl and just how they did it. Before we begin, this is your reminder to subscribe to us on YouTube, hit the notification bell to be notified every time we post a video. Be sure to like the podcast on whatever podcast platform you're listening to us on so that you never miss an episode, and follow us on TikTok and Instagram for all of our content. As another reminder, if you're still looking for a venue to watch the Super Bowl at, we'll be hosting an NFL-themed quiz at Committee Room 9 in Glasgow City Centre from 9 p.m. on Super Bowl Sunday. You can find out all information on our social media and the Committee Room 9 social media pages and information of how to book in. Now that's all the admin done. I'm joined this week by Gavin. How are you tonight, Gav?
I am doing good, ready to talk about our Final Four now as we become Final Two.
Exciting. I know, exciting stuff, ready for the showdown in San Francisco. So plenty to get through, and let's get straight to it. We'll go in chronological order. So let's start in Denver, where the conditions were brutal. Points were at a premium. The Patriots edged the Broncos 10-7 in a game dominated by defense, discipline, and probably situational football. So my first question, Gav, for you. How much do you think the weather dictated this game, and did New England simply adapt better than Denver?
I don't think it was everything in this game, because I think we had two strong defenses coming out in this game. We also had, obviously, a Broncos side playing with their backup quarterback in Jarrett Stidham. So I think this is one where perhaps we're expecting to be a little bit lower in terms of the total points than what we've seen elsewhere during the playoffs, and indeed what we saw later on yesterday evening. You know, despite this, I wouldn't call myself a purist, but I really enjoyed this game. I thought that it was just the tension was just dripping through this the whole way through, and the snow just added to it. I think I'd read somewhere this is the first postseason in something like 25 years where we've not had an indoor game at any stage throughout the bracket. And that's, of course, just because of who's qualified and who's had home field advantage and what have you. But this is what January football is made for. The snow, the wind, the elements, it's just all part of the drama. And we got plenty of that at Mile High.
Yeah. Plenty of it Mile High. To kind of go through some kind of like key points, Drake May didn't light up the stat sheet through the air, but his mobility was really crucial. So he had 65 rushing yards and a game-sealing scramble late on. Do you think this is kind of proven that he does have real value as a running quarterback?
I think so. I mean, certainly that was a big part of the game, particularly with the weather being as it was, that the Patriots needed to protect the football and move the game through the ground. But I actually think it's more than that. And I think this is where coaching really proved a difference maker. It was avoiding the negative plays. So actually, it wasn't about, sort of the fantasy points that you're getting, but crucially, didn't turn the ball over at any point in the game. Even beyond that, May took 5 sacks in this game, whereas I think Stidham took 3. Despite that, I think he only lost 21 yards through those sacks. So obviously nobody wants to take a sack at any time, but he avoided those negative plays turning into catastrophic plays, which I think Stidham, we saw a scenario where, yes, he's been in the league a long time, but actually his inexperience, at least in terms of gameplay, definitely showed at various points throughout the matchup. So I thought May was incredibly composed in a tough environment, both in terms of weather, also in terms of the crowd, because I think they were a factor throughout the game. You don't necessarily think of Denver as being one of the cauldrons of the NFL, but actually, again, playoff atmosphere just adds everything to that experience. There was a lot of noise, throughout as the game remained tight. He did what he had to. He made the plays when it came up. Obviously ran for a score, clinched the game on a rollout. For me, I think it's not about the stats, but it's about just making good decisions and staying composed under pressure.
Yeah, I was really impressed with him, just because obviously when you mentioned like something maybe like Stidham did, when he didn't take that sack and threw that ball away, that essentially was a massive point for that Patriots defense. And Drake May never allowed that to happen. He was like, I need to take a sack because there's nothing that's going on here. I'm not going to throw the ball into nothing to cause an interception, to cause any kind of turnover. And I was really impressed because he's so young. And again, it's only his second year. So yeah, I was super impressed by him overall. I think so. And then I guess speaking of the Patriots defense, so they came up big again. Christian Gonzalez obviously had a pivotal interception. I personally think the defense is going to be a key point to maybe beating their Super Bowl opponent. What do you think?
No, I mean, they always say defense wins championships. So I think, if the Patriots are going to have a chance in the Super Bowl, and I do think it's going to be tough for them, then that defense is going to be a key part of it. I think we've seen at times throughout the season, although it has to be said, not last night, Sam Darnold has struggled with pressure. He has struggled with turnovers. So I think that obviously he has the experience. Again, Seattle, a very well coached team, that would be in the Super Bowl if they weren't. I think there is going to be a real chess match going on between the coaches in terms of how they can try and get to Sam Darnold. Can they force some mistakes? Because this is certainly going to be a real challenge for the Patriots, even compared to the teams that they played throughout the postseason.
I know. And well, if you'd like a little fun fact, New England have now actually won the AFC Championship while scoring the fewest points across a playoff run. And I guess I don't know if that maybe shows about the defenses they played against, or does that show their offense? Probably a little bit of both, I'd say. But they did have a really impressive game against the Chargers. But again, it was against the Chargers. Flipping to the other side of this matchup, Denver really struggled without Bo Nix, with Stidham making costly errors. Do you think the outcome would have maybe been different with Nix? And I hate to play the, well, in hindsight type situation, but
yeah, I think I think it's fair to say it would have been a different game. Again, got to bear in mind that yes, that there was the snow, so that was going to be a factor even if Bo Nix is at quarterback. Similarly, I think obviously that there was a real sort of semi-final feel to kind of use a sort of a British expression. There was a lot of tension. I think you could see that both teams, particularly early on, worried about making mistakes. So would Bo Nix have changed the outcome? Possibly. I think if we look at individual moments, then certainly some of the decision making from Sim, of course, we've already talked about the interception, but just in terms of how he responded to pressure. So I talked about Drake May and how he handled sacks, trying to step up in the pocket. What really worried me was Stidham. Yes, he only got sacked 3 times throughout the course of the game, but he was going backwards when he was making these plays. He would just sort of backtrot. And the other thing that worried me with Stidham was the interception. Okay, it didn't lead to extra points, but it was late in the game, and actually it was in second down. I think they were facing a 2nd and 9. You didn't have to go for the deep shot. It wasn't close. You're playing 4 down game at that stage. So it was a completely unnecessary shot. There are going to be times when you're chasing the game where you do have to force it, but that wasn't the time to do it. And obviously, even though Nix is only a 2-year starter in the NFL, he's already got more experience than Stidham in terms of game time, to the point that you think that, yeah, there are going to be some things where he is going to shift the needle. Of course, then the question becomes, how do the Patriots respond to that? Because they were able to play most of that second half with a lead. Maybe they would needed to be a bit more aggressive if they were trailing. Nix, absolutely, I would say would have made it a different game.
yeah. I think so too. I think you also highlighted there, but kind of previously about coaching and how I think coaching obviously made quite an impact on it. Sean Payton was obviously quite aggressive early on, including a failed 4th down attempt, and I can still hear Brian screaming in our chat about just kick, just take the points, just take the points. Do you like that kind of approach in these conditions and in championship games and playoff games, or do you think it really cost Denver the game?
Again, did it cost Denver the game? Who knows if it actually changed it? I think it was definitely their own decision in the situation. Obviously, analytics has become such a big part of the game over the past few years, and Peyton's always been a coach with more sort of aggressive tendencies anyway. So you can understand the thought process in terms of going for it. Having said that, I think this is the time where you've got to account for the conditions, and I think that's something that's obviously going to make a big difference in terms of the games. Yeah, I think it was probably the wrong call for Peyton to lead points off the board, particularly when you're an offense that's struggling.
Yeah, when you're in those situations, you don't have your shining quarterback. We should probably take the points when and if we can get them. This is why we have this kind of games. These are what makes it exciting. So just to kind of zone and zoom out of it, right? What do you think this win says about Mike Vrabel and the Patriots culture? Obviously, a quarterback with loads of years still to go, a really strong defense, and a total buy-in from the roster. What do you think has impressed to you the most about that kind of culture shift?
Absolutely. I mean, I think there's always been questions throughout the season, particularly from this podcast, about the Patriots and perhaps the strength of schedule, who have they had to beat along the way. Ultimately, the Patriots have been 9-0 on the road this season. They are actually the first team in NFL history to go 9-0 in the course of a season. There is actually a team that's won more games on the road. I'll come back to that. But they know how to win. Obviously, Vrabel has been there many times in terms of getting to the Super Bowl, and there is a mentality that comes along with that. I don't necessarily want to say the Patriot way, because actually this is a new era. There's no Brady, there's no Belichick, so it's a different quarterback coach pairing. It's a very young team, actually, the Patriots, in terms of the rosters. Obviously, as much as there is that legacy of success, there is, I guess, a different culture in that locker room now. But ultimately, it comes down to knowing what you need to do to win. I think we can say it wasn't pretty at times, but I don't think there's many ways that you can win in a blizzard, to be honest with you. I think that it's going to be a very interesting Super Bowl in terms of what Vrabel brings and how he approaches a Seahawks team that will go into the game as strong favourites.
Yeah. I've always been, I think, impressed by Mike Vrabel. Obviously, he coached for the Titans, I had to play them twice a year, and I always thought he was really good, especially at a team that maybe didn't have that much going for them. So I have been really impressed with what he's been able to go in and do and just flip it flip it kind of around so quickly. And I think we'll talk about it later, but that's obviously one of the reasons why he's nominated for Coach of the Year. But so moving from a bit of a defensive slugfest to an offensive shootout to much nicer conditions in Seattle, where the Seahawks took this one 31-27 in a game that swung back and forth right until the end. Now, I think you've maybe highlighted it already, so I maybe know your answer. But do you think this was the best game of the postseason so far?
I think that's genuinely tough to say, because maybe the stakes swing it, because obviously this is championship weekend. Obviously, you one game away from the Super Bowl, and actually, one of the things I was reflecting on throughout the playoffs is actually how much the crowd amps up in the postseason, and that's something that's kind of lost in the Super Bowl between the neutral venue, but also the number of corporates. Whereas, you had the stadiums absolutely rocking for both games. So I still do have a bit of an affinity for what we saw in the wildcard weekend. I've got to say that there were some crazy games there, but I mean, this was, like you say, just end to end for the third time this season as well. Two teams that know each other very well, and we still had both sides making big play after big play throughout this, and it really did come down to
I know I think because a lot of people were very curious going into this about how it would swing because, again, like you said, this is the third matchup in a year. Both teams know each other. Both teams must study each other so much. But it was proven because they were actually quite equally matched. So obviously Sam Darnold threw for 346 yards with 3 touchdowns. Do you think this is the defining performance of his career so far?
without a shadow of a doubt. So, like you said, 346 yards, and crucially, as kind of alluded to earlier, no interceptions. We've talked about in general, losing the turnover battle in the playoffs is fatal 9 times out of 10, but it's been a very specific problem throughout the season and last season with Darnold as well. And what's really interesting was one of the narratives we've not thought about is he would be the first quarterback out of that 2018 draft class potentially to lift a Lombardi if he can get it done in 2 weeks' time. I think, certainly a year into his career, you probably would have struggled to say that, but I think right now he's he's looking a strong candidate.
And no pumpkin. People were sometimes refer to Sam Darnold turning into a bit of a pumpkin during the playoffs. The
No,
Cinderella story, I guess, continues. We mentioned it, but the Seahawks offense kind of just clicked all night. It was just moving. But I mean, the defense gave up nearly 480 yards. Do you maybe see that being a concern heading into the Super Bowl for them?
I just based on the nature of the opposition, actually, I don't think that's as much of a concern as the stat line might suggest. The Patriots, to be blunt, are a very different team. Actually, I don't think they've been very diplomatic. They are a
Yeah.
different team. They're not known for really lighting up the scoreboard and stat lines in quite the same way as the Rams have. Whereas we've seen two very high scoring affairs in the regular season between these two teams. We know that the Rams can score points. We know that Stafford has been putting on an MVP candidate level season, bolstered in particular by Puka Nacua, who's been putting some incredible performances together throughout the course of the year. So as much as the Seahawks have brutalised some of their opponents this year, I don't think it's surprising that we saw a shootout of this nature last night. I guess where you would probably draw the comfort is actually the Seahawks were making the stops when they had to, crucially making that 4th and goal stop with just over 5 minutes left in the game. And of course, they forced a key turnover in special teams on the Rams. So again, talking about that turnover battle, that was a big, big error from the Rams punt returner falling backwards as he tried to field the punt. Again, that's a situation where you just got to walk away. At the end of the day, if you lose a couple of yards in the punt, it's better than giving up the possession. So, no, I think that yes, of course, like any team, the Seahawks, they'll be looking at the film, trying to figure out where they could have done better. But I don't think it's going to be sent off alarm bells.
I don't think so either. I think that's quite diplomatic. That's fine. I guess again, speaking on like weapons on offense for them, Jackson Smith and Jibba was so difficult to go against in this game and pretty much all season. If you're New England, how are you slowing him down?
Well, this
Or
is
you're
going
not.
to be a really interesting question because they have not really been tested through the air throughout the playoffs. I think there's different reasons for that. We know that in the wild cards round, actually it's not so much Justin Herbert as his line that was really letting him down. Obviously, the Patriots were getting after him. CJ Stroud just had a nightmare in the divisional round. And as we've just talked about, the weather and the inexperience of Stidham were factors. I think it's going to be very different when obviously we get to Santa Clara in the Super Bowl. There was certainly one moment early on the game yesterday where Marvin Mims caught that deep ball from Stidham, which, yes, that was a nice, so it was a good read, but you actually saw both Patriot safeties converging in the same receiver. I think, to be fair, Mims looked like they were leaving him alone anyway, but there did seem to be a bit of miscommunication going on there. And I would worry that, if you can have moments like that in the Super Bowl, you're going to be punished.
Yeah, I would agree. And then to go to the other side of this game, I know Sean McVay's late game decision making's come under a bit of scrutiny. Do you think the Rams beat themselves, or were the Seahawks simply just kind of better when it mattered at the end?
I mean, one thing that jumped out to me in the sort of the recap of the game is there wasn't really a great number of possessions in this game, which I guess that shows a great deal of confidence from both coaches. Yes, of course, the Seahawks win the game, so you think, well, play calling's justified. I guess from the Rams' perspective, when I'm looking at the fourth quarter, and I think their sort of their main drive in the fourth, 15 plays, 7.5 minutes off the clock. That's actually taking them the clock down under 5 minutes. They chose to go for the end zone rather than try to kick it. Now, I think that's partly considering the Seahawks themselves have been really good looking after the ball, but there is a confidence that you're thinking you've got Matthew Stafford at quarterback, even 4-down ball, you can make that. It's really hard to say because two games, or say two teams, they're just so evenly matched in this one. I think that it's just someone's going to have to lose.
Yeah.
Is the honest answer. You've got McVay's absolutely broken after this. You've got Devante Adams, who's lost, I believe, 5 conference championships. So, that's
So.
that's a particularly painful experience for him. But I don't think anyone can deny that the Seahawks are worth it, both in the strength of last night and through the course of the season. They are the cream of the NFC. And I think what's really jumped out to me is that there there have been so many close, unpredictable matchups throughout the course of the season. The Seahawks have been a team that has consistently come out on top. They had to beat the Rams, they had to beat the 49ers to get the one seed, and they've always answered the call when it's come up. They've not really had the same banana skin games. The Rams lost to the Panthers early in the season. They looked pretty wobbly against them in the wildcard round. It has to be said, the Seahawks have always done what they've needed to.
Yeah, what they've needed to do. And you've mentioned him for a little bit. So obviously Matthew Stafford. So obviously he came in to this season with questions about when and how he would perform, because obviously with his back, which is now involved into an MVP level campaign, and has concluded with questions about how many more years he can play. Do you have an idea of what that maybe looks like? Do you see him continuing on this path to be with the greats? I think he's really impressive. I really rate Matthew Stafford.
Yeah, I mean, I think that this was a hell of a performance. And like we said, it's 370 yards, 3 touchdowns. He did not turn the ball over in this game. Obviously, look at maybe that final or that final before last penultimate drive is the word I'm looking for, where he could have got the ball into the end zone, and I'm sure that will be playing over in his mind. But I think that this was a superb performance. I always kind of think as well, it's about what comes next. So I guess thinking about the reason to go on, first of all, he didn't win the Super Bowl. He's not made it to another Super Bowl. And there are players around him to think, actually, no, I want to run it back with these guys. If we just make slight changes, slight adjustments, there is a chance for us. Obviously, you've got the coach in play as well with Sean McVay. On the flip side, that's a stacked division. The Seahawks feels like they're just getting started as a team. Obviously, it's tough to get back to the Super Bowl, whether you win or lose. When you're picking down at the bottom end of the draft, you've had less time to prepare for the subsequent season. But I've got the feeling that they will be contenders for several years to come. Similarly, the 49ers, despite having an injury list along my arm, they have managed to keep themselves in games in the season. I think some of us wouldn't have been surprised if they made it to the Super Bowl. So the fact that you've got a division where there's 3 tough teams, that's always going to be a challenge. And that's maybe, again, going to play right in the head in terms of what Stafford thinks for his own prospects in subsequent seasons. But I don't think it's cut and dried.
No, I don't think so either. We obviously we mentioned Vrabel, so it's probably only right that we talk about McDonald as well. I mean, he's just in his second season as head coach and is already heading to a Super Bowl. How impressive do you think his impact on this Seahawks team has been?
So Mike McDonald.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, I think there's no doubt about it. As I say, that this is a team that's just completely turned it around. I mean, we've seen some fantastic postseason moments in Seattle, but not really for a decade or so. It plays very much back that swagger. They are winning the close games. They're brutalizing other opponents, as we've seen with the 49ers in the tail end of the regular season. It was a very different approach. They smothered the 49ers. Yeah, however they do it, whether it's in dominant fashion or just clutch fashion, they're winning all these games. There's a real momentum about Seattle at the moment. And yeah, it really does start with the coach. At the end of the day, Sam Darnold is a competent quarterback, but he's not been able to get over the hump in any other city that he's played in so far. I think this is just, you're starting to see that all the pieces are finally starting to click into place for him. And Mike McDonald's a huge part of that.
And I guess kind of on both the mention of these coaches coming in and then having success really early on, with the kind of coaching carousel being as it currently stands, do you think that this is going to have an impact in terms of what your head office is going to expect from these new head coaches to come in and get immediate results?
Well, I mean, every front office is different. We've seen with the Steelers that were kind of floating around seemed to be floating around the 500 mark for 20 years. And ultimately, Tomlin was never fired at the end of it. He walked away, which may have been kind of a quiet decision to let him go out with some dignity. Most teams, I think we are seeing an increasing impatience. It was pointed out with the Bills when they let go of McDermott that actually no coach quarterback combination has been to the Super Bowl after 5 years, which seems like quite a long time. But if you think about it, if you were consistently making it deep into the postseason, you'd think that's still relatively successful. But I think most front offices want to have that chance to be in the big game. That means that even if you are a successful team, you're going to take some swings. The Patriots situation, of course, that was interesting because Gerard Mayo had only been in the role for 1 year, and they decided, no, we are going to move on because this feels like the right thing to do. I don't think anyone's arguing with that now. I think it could absolutely be a trend. Obviously, there's money factors to be considered if you're signing coaches to 5-year deals and getting rid of them early on. But it's been said that the coach is really the one thing that you can really control in your organization. When you draft a quarterback, you're never quite sure what you're getting. Any player can get injured, but the coach is always there setting the tone, making the play calls. So it's so important to get that decision right in the hiring process for your organization that, I think that there's going to be a lot of teams reflecting that. I think we're already seeing that because actually I think it's 10 coaching vacancies for this hiring cycle, which is one of the highest for a long time. So obviously there's a lot of teams basically thinking that the grass is greener. Will it turn out that way? There's going to be a lot of disappointed teams in this, but it's going to be interesting to find out who makes the leap, who's disappointed.
And it might be difficult for these teams, but it's fun for us as viewers to watch, which is really all that matters.
Plenty to talk about, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, let's chat about something else that is happening Super Bowl week, which is the NFL honors with the finalists being announced, and there's plenty to debate. So we'll start with MVP. So you have Drake May, you have Josh Allen, you have Trevor Lawrence, you have Matthew Stafford, and you have Christian McCaffrey. There's the only reason this is not currently a QB award. Who is getting your vote and why?
Well, I love Josh Allen, to be honest, but I think it's going to be Matthew Stafford in this one. He has just had such a solid campaign throughout the year. So obviously been very exciting defensively to watch. I think there's, with any award, there's always a bit of like, they deserve it. And I think that, Stafford, he's been in the league since 2009. I was trying to do my maths in my head. That's 17 years he's come up for now. Yeah, I think it just feels like he's due for it.
Yeah, I agree. When you say about consistency, in my opinion, out of the 5, he has been the most consistent, that you're going to get a good performance from him, even if the defense do something. You know that he's going to come in, he's going to put up the points. And that would, in theory, they know they can, taking last night out of it, they can win if they have Matthew Stafford playing. So yes, he would also be my pick. And another category that's really stacked and probably quite is also one of these ones that who really knows which way it could swing. Coach of the Year includes both Mike Vrabel and Mike McDonald, but face some great competition with Liam Cohen, Ben Johnson, and Kyle Shanahan. I have not a clue who is going to take this one. I have my thoughts, but I would love to hear yours first.
Well, we've talked quite a bit about 2 of these coaches this evening. I am actually going to go for someone we've not talked about too much tonight, and that's Ben Johnson, because I just think it's just such a seismic change in Chicago. Maybe not one of the disastrous franchises of the NFL, but certainly one that's underperformed for a long, long time. We always talk about how the Bears have never had a 4,000-yard passer, and admittedly, that's still the case. But if you look at the way that this team's played, they've been so exciting, and it's not even, we talk a lot about fourth quarter comebacks. This team has had 2-minute warning comebacks. 6 of them, I think, with another one in the wild card round. Just that's unbelievable. And if we look at how not identical, but very similar roster did last year. We thought Caleb Williams would come in, they loaded up on free agents, and it didn't quite coalesce. And Ben Johnson just seems to be able to take that package and mold it and evolve it into something which really looks like they belong with the Detroit Lions, the Green Bay Packers in that division. Yeah, I think it's Johnson.
Yeah, I think the other two we've not mentioned are also probably quite incredibly worthy to have it. I mean, Kyle Shanahan has made an absolute mess into something that who would have known that would have alluded to with them even making the playoffs when they were putting the injury reports out. And I have a soft spot for Liam Cohen, and I think what he's been able to do, especially in the back half of the season, has been really impressive. But when you said there about how the Bears have been just kind of plodding along for a little bit, and they've got a really devoted fan base who they've been around for so long, who really want to see some good things coming out of it. I think it's been really, really good for the city of Chicago in particular. Ben Johnson would also be my vote if we were allowed to pick. I think so. Both Rookie of the Year awards are also stacked. We don't have to go through both offensive and defensive, but who do you think has made the biggest difference on their team this season?
Yeah, see, I was hoping we can probably with all the candidates now.
I know.
You've been keeping
I will go out and say I think Trayvon Henderson has been probably the best in my opinion. Again, we talk about consistency a lot. He's done really, really well. Coming in, again, we talk about young team, how we're able to perform in that, getting in the culture. And again, he's not really had anything really else to like go against. But I think he's been really impressive. What 911 yards in your first season, 9 touchdowns. I mean, I think that's pretty good going. And I don't really know. I can't even remember who the Patriots had as their main running back last year, which really shows
I think that
how much anybody paid attention. But yeah, I think he's my choice. He would be my choice for offensive rookie of the year, in my opinion. I think he's played pretty good first season.
It's interesting actually just looking at the odds in these. So the favourite currently with FanDuel, if you want your source here, is Ted McMillan from the Panthers.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he's probably your pick, or and somebody else on this podcast pick.
Just one week on for that. And yeah, I've got to say, I do need to. I am kind of leaning with the Patriots pick myself. There's a lot of consensus on this pod this evening. Jackson Dart's the second favourite. And as a Giants fan, I think he's really exciting talent. I just think that he's probably not done enough in terms of games played. I think the fact that actually, even if it's bad luck, part of it is playing style. He's been in the blue 10 at times. I think that's probably a bit of a question mark. Obviously, as I say, the Giants have failed to put games away, which I don't think has necessarily been on Dart. But there's maybe not enough of a story to tell around that for him to come good. And yeah, I feel this is one where actually the performance of the team is a part of it. Interestingly, Henderson has the longest odds of the main candidates, but yeah, that's the story that I like. I think Ibuka for the Bucks has been phenomenal at times. Other times it feels like he's kind of shied away. So yeah, I think for me, actually, I do like Henderson. Whether or not he actually gets the gong, we'll need to see.
Who's the front runner for Defensive Player of the Year?
Let's tell you.
Let's have a check. I will put my hands up and say I'm always so bad with defensive players unless they are my own.
So again, this is with FanDuel. The favourite by quite some margin is Carson Schwessinger of the Browns.
Okay, interesting. Fab. All right. Well, he will probably win it then.
Yeah, I think it certainly looks like he's on his way to win. But yes, obviously, Brian would love to be here to make the case, and he dearly wanted to be with us this evening. But I guess part of that is being on the other side of the line from Myles Garrett as well. how can you add to that? So that, of course, we did see in certain games towards the end of the season that he was facing double, if not triple teams, but actually forcing offensive coordinators on the other side to think, actually, there is someone else we need to consider. Yeah, so I think that's perhaps a nice story if he can get a gong, given that Miles is not in the running for Defensive Player of the Year, I believe.
No, he is. Yeah,
Wait,
no, he's there.
yes,
Yeah, he's my choice. So that would be interesting if they both took away the defensive awards.
I thought Brian had maybe he's the MVP that he was expecting to
It's
be
the MVP
to be in.
he was annoyed about. Yeah. I mean, yeah, Myles Garrett is my choice for Defensive Player of the Year. I would assume he is the favourite. I would not, I guess maybe Hutchinson would maybe be the other one that he would kind of be coming up against. Yeah, I think if you can, when you break a record that has been standing as it has been, I feel like you kind of have to give the man his flowers.
Yeah.
And 23 sacks in a year with an extra game is still very, very impressive in my eyes.
Yeah, I mean, it's a strong list, it has to be said, because you've also got Micah Parsons, who, of course, went down injured, but really was looking like a fantastic bit of business for the Packers. And I think that probably is a big part of their late season collapse with him going down to injury. Will Anderson Jr., of course, a big part of the Texans defense that really has carried that team at times. It's a strong list, but it's hard to argue against Myles Garrett.
I don't really know how anyone can do it.
Even I temporarily wrote him out of the.
Even if he still comes to mind, doesn't he? And then I guess maybe what I would potentially say is the most interesting award, because I love how they had to go back and really make the category much less ambiguous, is Comeback Player of the Year. And basically what they said was, you can't pick somebody who had a bad season and then come back and do something quite good. You have to have somebody that's beaten some kind of adversity, let's say. It has to be like an injury comeback. It needs to be like an illness comeback. It needs to be something of that caliber. So your choices are Stephon Diggs, Aiden Hutchinson, Trevor Lawrence, Christian McCaffrey, and Dak Prescott. Now, to my research, this is maybe suggested as the most wide open category. Nobody really knowing what's going to be the outcome of it. I mean, this will be where my bias is shown, and I think that it probably should be Trevor Lawrence, mostly because
Make the case.
he always make my case. Okay, that's fine. Mostly because he obviously had the concussion and the shoulder injury against the Texans last year, which pretty much derailed the entire rest of the Jags season. It wasn't very good last year anyway, and it got worse. But I think to take that in the offseason, to get that surgery done in the offseason, and then to come back and take that big step up as we were all thinking he now has, again, coming back into a new regime, a new coaching staff, a new GM, everybody around you is brand new, essentially. And to come in and take charge again, I think is really impressive. And everybody last year was saying, oh, he's out, oh, he's this, oh, he's that. And I think to come back kind of from that adversity has been really, really nice to see. And I hope it's not a one and done. And that's directly to Trevor if he ever watches this.
So, I mean, it is a really strong.
Oh yeah.
Nominees for this. I mean, if I'm looking at the list cold, Hutchinson's name is one that really jumps out for me. And I think part of that is actually the way that he went out last year with such a horrific injury, and yet the comeback award is not meant to be your dedication to rehab. He just seemed to come back. The recovery just seemed to be so remarkable just in terms of his progress. That alone was impressive, but he's, of course, logged 14 and a half sacks. So it has been an emphatic season. Having said that, of course, the Lions did not make the playoffs. And I think what is maybe interesting is that it's has actually just come out. Christian McCaffrey has won the Pro Football Writers Comeback Player of the Year award. Again, if you look at a story there, he's had to deal with adversity with his own injuries last season, but then has had to really help to carry the 49ers through a hell of a lot of adversity this year as well, even once he's been back on the field. Yeah, I mean, there's a great story there. And of course, Dak has struggled with injuries. And I think early on, certainly some people, even if they're called Dan, were murmuring about an MVP caliber season. Maybe just, again, if you're looking at the bigger picture, the Cowboys obviously haven't had maybe the great team story to tell with a couple of these candidates do. I think the one that maybe is a bit of an outlier on that list for me is Stephon Diggs, who's had some of the field stuff, and I just wonder if that's going to influence the vote, even though he's the one that's on his way to Santa Clara in a couple of weeks.
I know. So that'll be interesting. I wake up in the morning and seeing, because I think, I mean, if you're nominated, it's an incredible achievement to be nominated. And it's a nice do up, right? It's nice to get all dressed up, right? I guess they get out of their uniforms. But we are now all set for a Patriots versus Seahawks Super Bowl, which is a matchup that brings back memories but feels like a completely new era. Which team's path to the Super Bowl has impressed you more?
I feel like this is fit. I mean, it has to be the Seahawks. Just to look at the division that they play in, as I say, the Rams have been an excellent side for a number of years. 49ers have just been so tough despite their injuries this year. Despite that, Seattle have just overcome everything that's been thrown at them. I think the Patriots, I think in some ways we're being kind of harsh on them in the fact that this is a team that was 4-13 a year ago. So there is a lot to like about what they've done. But if we're just looking at the caliber of the opposition, it's got to be the Seahawks. You're welcome, guys.
It's also the Seahawks for me. Yeah. I mean, it's also the Seahawks for me. Again, I was told by somebody in particular that I had to point this out, picked at the start of the playoff, I picked the Seahawks and the Patriots to be my Super Bowl. So do you know what? I'll give myself a pat on the back. I have had I'm terrible in the regular season for picking picks, but put me in the playoffs, and I know what's up. Which is interesting because we've done the best and Brian's done absolutely terrible in this, and he can't defend himself right now. Sorry, Brian.
Is the Cowboys have picked him?
Is the Cowboys have picked him?
Great January.
Exactly that. Well, that brings us to the end of another great episode. So once again, make sure you're following us on Instagram and TikTok. Subscribe to us on YouTube and all podcast platforms to get notification when our next podcast drops. I am very happy to report that our In Conversation series will be back very, very soon. Please keep an eye on socials for details on just who that is. And I mean, it's a big one. We are very, very excited for who that person will be. But yes, thank you for joining me on this episode, Gavin. It's been wonderful to chat through everything.
It's been a pleasure to be here. And in answer to the tease that I left earlier, the team that won 10
oh yeah, please tell me.
season has been in front of you all along. 2007, 2008 New York Giants won 10 games on the road. They did actually lose one, but because they played 3 road games on the way to the Super Bowl, they have the most most road wins in a single season.
Wow. And look at them now. Who would have thought?
Who thought it? Yep.
Who would have thought?
Years later.
And the year of our Lord 2022 would have thought that's the stat we've been looking at them for. Thanks, Giants. We appreciate
Thank you.
Well, we'll be back next week in our Super Bowl preview episode, because we were dipping the toes into it. We'll have a full breakdown on both of these teams, how we think they can win, and probably how we think Super Bowl 60 will play out. But until then, we will see you very soon.